She slid the folder across the table like she was doing me a favor. I was still holding my coffee mug with both hands, the way I always do at Sunday dinners, because the kitchen in my daughter's house runs cold even in May. And I watched that manila folder travel across the tablecloth until it stopped against my bread plate. "Just look at it, Mom," she said. "We already toured it. You'd love it." My son-in-law was cutting his chicken. He didn't look up. I set down my mug. I opened the folder. The cover page said Whispering Pines Senior Living Community in a font that was probably meant to feel warm. There were photographs, a sunlit common room with wingback chairs, a garden path with marigolds on both sides, a woman with white hair, about my age, I suppose, smiling at a chessboard with a man in a cardigan. I turned the pages slowly. I did not say anything. "It's independent living," my daughter Serena said. It's not a nursing home. You'd have your own apartment, 2 bedrooms even. There's a pool." "A heated pool," her husband Conrad added. He was still cutting his chicken. "I know what independent living means," I said. "I do. I'm 67 years old. I've lived alone for 9 years, since Harold died, in the same house on Clover Mill Road in Denton, Ohio, where we raised 3 kids and grew tomatoes every summer. And once, during a particularly bad winter, sheltered a stray dog for 4 months until we found him a home. I drive. I cook. I go to my book club on Thursdays. I do the crossword every morning in pen. I am not confused. I am not fragile. I am not a problem to be solved." I closed the folder. "We can talk about this later," I said. Serena looked at her husband. That particular look, I've seen it before. It's the one that means she's not going to do it on her own, so we'll have to push harder. "Mom," she said, "your house is a lot of upkeep. The roof alone. I had the roof looked at in March. It's fine." Conrad talked to a contractor. I didn't ask Conrad to talk to a contractor. I picked up my fork. "The pot roast is good, sweetheart. You got the carrots right this time." She didn't say anything else that night. But I drove home with the folder still on her table, and I sat in my driveway for a long time before I went inside. I knew that conversation wasn't over. I also knew, somewhere in the part of me that raised children and buried a husband and paid every bill on time for 41 years, that something was already in motion, something I hadn't been invited into. I should tell you something about the house. Harold and I bought it in 1987 for $94,000. We thought that was an impossible sum at the time. He was an electrician. I was working part-time at the county assessor's office, and we scraped the down payment together from 3 years of birthday money and Christmas envelopes from his parents. The mortgage payment was $612 a month. I remember it exactly because I wrote that number on a notepad and stuck it to the refrigerator so we'd never forget what we were working for. We paid it off in 2009. Harold cried when we sent the final check. He was not a man who cried often. After he passed, the house became mine in every way that mattered. I repainted the bedroom. The sage green Harold always said he'd get around to hating, turned out to be something I needed. I bought a new couch. I learned to use the snowblower properly instead of pretending I needed to ask the neighbor's son. I changed the locks, not because I was scared, but because I wanted to know that the only keys in existence were the ones I chose to hand out. There are 3 of those. One for my son Patrick, who lives 40 minutes away in Columbus. One for my neighbor Trudy, who waters the plants when I travel. And one that lives on a hook by my own back door. The house appraised at $430,000 last fall. I didn't ask for the appraisal. My realtor friend Gwen offered it over lunch, just as information. I thanked her, put the number away in my head, and didn't think much more about it. I'm thinking about it now. 2 weeks after the Sunday dinner, Patrick called me on a Tuesday afternoon. He never calls on Tuesdays. He's a project manager at a logistics company. His weeks run Monday through Friday in a very particular rhythm, and Tuesday afternoons are for status updates with his team. "Hey, Mom," he sounded careful. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine, Patrick. I'm making soup. What kind?" "Chicken and rice. The good kind, with lemon. Dad's recipe. My recipe. Dad was the one who always burned it." He laughed a little. Then he got quiet. Then he said, "Have you given any more thought to what Serena mentioned about Whispering Pines?" I turned the burner, Down. She asked you to call me, I said. She's worried. She sent you to call me. That's different. The soup simmered. Mom, I'm not taking sides. I just think, Patrick. I set the spoon down on the rest by the stove. Harold gave me that spoon rest. It's ceramic, shaped like a little fish, and it's been in the same spot for 22 years. Do you think I'm having trouble taking care of myself? A pause. No, but do you think I'm forgetting things? Getting confused? No, Mom, that's not what. Have I asked anyone for help that I couldn't get on my own? No. Then why are we having this conversation? Another pause. Longer this time. Serena says there are some things, financial things. She's worried you're not, that maybe someone should be helping you manage everything. Financial things. I picked the spoon back up. I gave the soup a slow stir. Okay, I said. Thank you for telling me. We talked for another 10 minutes about his kids. My grandsons, 8 and 12, who I see every other Sunday and who I love with a ferocity that is difficult to explain to people who don't have grandchildren. Then I said goodbye, and I hung up and I stood in my kitchen for a solid 5 minutes without moving. Financial things. I walked to my desk in the back room. The room Harold used to call his office, and I call my everything room because I pay bills there, wrap Christmas presents there, do my taxes there, and sometimes just sit there in the armchair and read when I want to feel surrounded by things that matter. I opened the second drawer on the right side. I pulled out the red accordion folder, where I keep every financial document organized by year and category, because I have done this for my entire adult life, because Harold and I agreed early on that nobody sleeps well when they don't know where their money is. I went through everything: savings, checking, the house, the small IRA from my years at the assessor's office, the CD Harold had set up in 2006 that I'd rolled over twice, the life insurance payout I'd invested conservatively and left mostly untouched because I didn't want to think too hard about what it represented. Everything was exactly where it should be. Everything was mine. But I sat there for a long time after that. Because Serena had said financial things to Patrick, and Patrick had said it back to me, and neither of them had said what they actually meant. And in my experience, when people dance around what they actually mean, it's because the thing they mean doesn't sound very good when you say it plainly. I called Gwen the next morning. Gwen has been my friend since 1994 and my realtor since 2011, when I helped sell Harold's mother's place after she passed. She knows things about property in this county the way some people know scripture, thoroughly, with complete confidence, and with an opinion about all of it. Gwen, I said, I want to ask you something strange. My favorite kind of question, she said. If someone wanted to do something fraudulent with a house, take money out against it, or pretend to have some claim to it, how would that work? What would the signs be? A short pause. Why are you asking me this, Bev? My name is Beverly, but only Patrick and Harold ever called me that. Everyone else calls me Bev, and Gwen has called me Bev since the day we met at the school fundraiser when her daughter and Serena were in the same third-grade class. I want to understand how it works, I said. Theoretically. Gwen is smart. She didn't push. Okay, theoretically. The most common thing is a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. Someone could try to open one against a property using forged paperwork. You'd need a deed copy, some identification, a notary willing to look the other way or be fooled. Banks catch it sometimes. Sometimes they don't, if the paperwork's convincing, and the owner wouldn't necessarily know, not right away. The bank sends notices to the address on the deed, so if someone were intercepting your mail. She stopped. Bev, what's going on? I told her. All of it. The folder at Sunday dinner. The call from Patrick. The phrase financial things, and the careful way it had been said, like it was already an established fact that just hadn't been announced yet. Gwen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I want you to do something for me today. Right now, this morning. What? Go online and look up your property record with the county auditor. It's public record. Look at who's listed on the deed. It should just be me, I said. It's been just me since Harold. It should be, she said. Go look. I looked. It was just me. Beverly Ann Moreno, sole owner, no liens recorded, no encumbrances. I exhaled slowly. Okay, Gwen said when I told her. Good. Now here's what I want you to do next. She walked me through it. Set up a property alert with the county auditor. Free, automatic, sends an email anytime a document is filed against your address. Call the bank and add a verbal password to my account so that no one can access information without it. Make an appointment with an estate attorney to review my documents. Not because anything was wrong, but because when something feels wrong, you do your paperwork before it becomes a problem. And Bev, she said before she hung up, whatever Serena is planning, and I'm not saying she is, I'm just saying whatever this is, you need to know exactly what you own and have it documented before anyone has a conversation with you about it. I wrote everything down. I made the calls. I booked the appointment with an estate attorney for the following Thursday. Then I sat down with a cup of coffee and thought very carefully about what I knew and what I still didn't know. What I knew. Serena had toured a senior living community without telling me. She had told Patrick there were financial things. Her husband Conrad had spoken to a contractor about my roof without being asked. What I didn't know. What, specifically, they thought was wrong with my finances. Whether Patrick had actually agreed with her or had just been recruited as a messenger. What they thought was going to happen next. I picked up the phone. Not to call Serena. Not yet. I called my attorney. Her name is Janet Schiller, and I've used her for estate matters since 2017, when I updated my will after Harold passed. She's in her 50s, keeps an office downtown above the insurance agency, and has a way of listening that makes you feel like she's already 3 steps ahead and just waiting for you to catch up. I told her what I'd told Gwen. She asked quiet, precise questions. She took notes. Have you been approached about a power of attorney? She said. No. Has anyone mentioned guardianship or conservatorship? I didn't know the difference offhand. She explained it quickly. Conservatorship is a legal arrangement where a court appoints someone to manage your finances, usually when a judge determines you can't do it yourself. It requires a petition, a hearing, medical evaluations. Serena would have to go to court, I said. If she wanted to pursue conservatorship, yes, she'd need to demonstrate that you're unable to manage your own affairs, which, based on what you're telling me, would not be an easy case to make. She hasn't done that. Not yet. But the fact that she's already using language like financial things to a third party, your son, tells me she may be laying groundwork, building a narrative. That landed somewhere cold in my chest, building a narrative. What do I do? I said. First, you make sure your documents are airtight. Updated will, clear beneficiary designations on all accounts, a durable power of attorney that you've already assigned to someone you trust, so that if anyone petitions the court to assign one for you, there's already a legal document in place. I trust Patrick, I said, and then I stopped, because I wasn't sure that was still completely true. Janet waited. I trust Patrick to love me, I said. I don't know if I trust him not to let Serena talk him into something. Then we choose someone else, she said simply. A friend, a niece or nephew, a trusted professional. It doesn't have to be a family member. I thought about Trudy, my neighbor, who has known me for 20 years and has never once treated me like a problem to be managed. I thought about my nephew in Cincinnati, Serena and Patrick's cousin, a quiet man who runs a hardware store and sends me a Christmas card every year with a handwritten note inside. Good. Here's the other thing I want you to do. She paused. Get a cognitive evaluation. I blinked. I told you I'm not. I know you're not. That's exactly why I want you to get one. Done now, on your own initiative with a clean result, that evaluation becomes armor. If Serena ever stands in front of a judge and says your mother can't manage her affairs, you hand over a document from a licensed neuropsychologist dated 3 weeks ago saying you scored in the normal range for your age across all measures. It closes the door before she can open it. I sat with that for a moment. It was the kind of practical that only looks cold until you understand what it's protecting. Schedule it, I said. Both the evaluation and the will review. I want to tell you about Conrad, because I've been careful not to so far. Conrad Helmer has been married to my daughter for 14 years. When they got engaged, Harold shook his hand and said, "She's the best thing we ever made, don't you forget it." And Conrad nodded seriously and said, "I know, sir." I thought that was a good sign. I was wrong in the specific way that you can be wrong about someone when they're on their best behavior. He sells commercial real estate. He's good at it. Good enough that for the first 10 years of their marriage, the money was fine. They bought a house in the Hilliard suburb of Columbus, a 4-bedroom colonial with a back deck, and they drove nice cars and took the kids to Florida every spring. Then, about 2 years ago, something changed. I noticed it the way you notice things about people you love, gradually, and then all at once. The Florida trip didn't happen. The conversation about renovating the kitchen quietly disappeared. Serena stopped mentioning the new car. I didn't ask. It wasn't my business. I figured if they needed help, they'd say so. They didn't say so. What they did instead, I found out later, was take out a personal loan, a significant one. I don't know exactly how much, but Patrick let something slip during a phone call in the fall. Something about Conrad being in over his head, and I stored it away in the back of my mind where I keep information I'm not supposed to have. I understand now that the Whispering Pines folder was not about my well-being. It was about the house on Clover Mill Road, appraised at $430,000, owned free and clear, by a woman who was going to have to go somewhere eventually. And if she went somewhere now, the house would sell, and the money would need somewhere to go. I understand that my daughter looked at her mother's home and saw a solution to her husband's problem. I wish I didn't understand that, but I do. The Sunday dinners kept happening. November, then December. I went because I love my grandchildren, and because disappearing would have told Serena something I wasn't ready for her to know yet. I brought pie. I asked about school projects. I watched Conrad refill his wine glass and say very little. Then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A man's voice, professional, said he was calling from Clearwater Lending about a HELOC application on a property at my address. I said very carefully, I didn't apply for a HELOC. A pause. "We have an application here with your name and signature, ma'am," I said. "I'd like you to hold that application and not process it. I'm going to call you back within the hour." I called Janet first. Then Gwen. Then I called the fraud department at the county recorder's office. Someone had filed a document. Not a deed transfer. They hadn't gone that far. But a document asserting that Serena Helmer was co-owner of the property at my address, based on a quitclaim deed that I had supposedly signed and had notarized in October. I had done no such thing. Janet moved fast. She filed an affidavit with the county recorder's office disputing the document. She contacted Clearwater Lending with a letter on letterhead, making clear the application was fraudulent and that the property was solely mine. She copied the county sheriff's office. The HELOC was denied. The fraudulent document was flagged. And I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the fish-shaped spoon rest and thought about my daughter, who I had loved every minute of her life, and what I was going to do next. There's a moment in every family crisis where you have to decide what kind of person you're going to be about it. You can scream, you can collapse, you can cut people off and never look back. I decided I was going to be very, very quiet and very, very clear. I called Patrick. "I need you to come over," I said. "This Saturday, alone." He came. He sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Harold and I signed the original mortgage papers in 1987, and I put 3 things in front of him. The first was a copy of the fraudulent quitclaim deed with the forged signature that someone, who, I was very precise about not saying out loud, had filed with the county. The second was the letter from Janet to Clearwater Lending, with the fraud notation and the copy to the sheriff's office. The third was a printout of the property record, showing my name alone, no liens, no encumbrances, the alert system I'd set up, and the date I'd set it up, 6 weeks before the fraudulent document was filed. Patrick read everything. He went pale somewhere in the middle. He didn't say I didn't know. He didn't say Serena would never. He looked at the forged signature, and he was quiet for a very long time. Finally, he said, "Mom, I'm sorry." "What, specifically, are you sorry for?" I said, not cruelly, but precisely. He ran his hand over his face. I knew she was worried about Conrad's debt. I didn't know it had gotten. I didn't think she would. "You called me." I said, and used the phrase financial things. What did you think that meant? His jaw tightened. I thought she wanted you to sell the house. I thought I was helping her make the case. You were building a narrative, Patrick. That's what Janet called it. I folded my hands on the table. You were telling me there was something wrong with my finances, so that when Serena later said there was something wrong with my finances, it would already be a thing I'd heard from 2 different people. He didn't deny it. That, at least, was something. There's nothing wrong with my finances, I said. My accounts are current, my house is paid off, my will is updated, and I had a cognitive evaluation 2 weeks ago that came back clean across the board. If anyone tries to take this to a judge, they'll be walking into a room where I've already answered every question they're planning to ask. Patrick was very still. What happens now, he said. That depends on Serena's, I said. I'm not going to press charges. Not yet. Janet has advised me I have grounds to, and she's prepared to move forward if I choose to. But I'm going to give your sister one conversation first. I called Serena on a Tuesday. I asked her to come to the house on Saturday for lunch. I made her favorite, chicken salad on sourdough, the way I've made it since she was 12, with dried cranberries and a little tarragon. I set the table properly. I made iced tea. She came in looking like she hadn't slept well. She sat down and looked at the chicken salad and said, "This smells amazing! Mom, sit down," I said. I put the same 3 documents in front of her that I'd put in front of Patrick. I didn't say anything. I let her read. The color left her face in stages. The pink from the cold outside first, then the color in her cheeks. By the time she got to the letter from Janet, she was the color of the kitchen wall. "Mom, I'm going to speak first," I said, "and then you can say whatever you need to say." She closed her mouth. "Conrad forged my signature," I said. "He filed a document asserting you were co-owner of my home without my knowledge or consent. He applied for a line of credit against my property. That is mortgage fraud, Serena. It is a federal crime. I have copies of everything. Janet has copies of everything. And the county sheriff's office has a copy of the fraud report." She had started to cry. I waited. "I want you to understand something," I said. "I have been managing my finances for 41 years. I was managing them before you were born. I will be managing them long after this conversation. I am not confused. I am not declining. I am not a problem you need to solve." She was crying openly now. "Mom, I didn't know he was going to. Did you know about the quitclaim deed?" Silence. Long enough to be an answer. "Not the details," she finally said. "He said he was going to. He said you'd never miss a little bit, that the house was worth so much that eventually you'd need." "He said I'd never miss it," I said, "and you let him say that." "I was scared," she said. "We're in so much debt, Mom, I didn't know what else. You could have called me," I said. "You could have sat down at this table and said, 'Mom, we're in trouble. Can you help us think through this?' I would have listened. I would have helped you look at the options. I have sat at this table with both of you for 14 years, and at no point did either of you think to just talk to me." She was sobbing now. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers, because I am her mother, and I have loved her for 40 years, and neither of those things changed when she did something I can't entirely forgive. "I'm not pressing charges right now," I said. "Conrad needs to understand, and I will tell him directly, in writing, through Janet, that any further attempt to access my property, my accounts, or my financial information will result in a criminal complaint filed the same day. That is not a threat. That is how this works going forward." She nodded, still crying. "And the Whispering Pines folder," I said. "I need you to hear this clearly. I am not moving. Not now. Not because you want me to. If I ever decide to change my living situation, I will make that decision myself, with information I gather myself in my own time. Are we clear?" "Yes," she whispered. "Good." I picked up the chicken salad. "Eat something. It's getting warm." I had one more thing left to do. I'd been thinking about it since the Tuesday after the Sunday dinner when all of this started, since I drove home with the folder still on her table and sat in my driveway and felt the first cold pull of something being in motion without me. I called Gwen. "I want to list a property," I said. She was quiet for a second. "Your house?" "No," I said. "The rental property. That's the other thing I haven't mentioned. 7 years ago, when the interest rates were low and I had some of the life insurance money sitting in a CD, earning almost nothing, Harold's brother talked me into looking at a small rental property. A 2-bedroom house on the east side of Denton, the kind of neighborhood that was starting to turn, the kind of investment that felt modest and manageable. I bought it for $112,000. A property management company handles the tenant and the maintenance calls. I get a check every month. I had never once mentioned it to Serena or Patrick. It is mine. It has always been mine. And it has been appreciating quietly in the background of my life for 7 years, while my children assumed the only thing I owned was the house on Clover Mill Road. I listed the rental property, not because I needed the money, though the timing would give me a comfortable cushion, but because I wanted something documented, on the market, real, in the world, something that said, I am the one who decides what happens to what is mine. It sold in 11 days. A young couple, a teacher and a nurse, just starting out. They reminded me a little of Harold and me in 1987. I signed the papers at the title company on a Tuesday morning in February, and the closing coordinator offered me coffee, and I said, yes, please. And I sat in that chair and felt something settle back into place. When I got home, I called Patrick. I have something to tell you, I said. I told him about the rental property, about the sale, about the account the proceeds were going into. My account, in my name, with the new verbal password Gwen had reminded me to set. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, I didn't know you had that. No, I said. You didn't. Another pause. Is that? Are you telling me this because you want me to know? Or because you want me to tell Serena? I smiled a little there in my kitchen, by the stove where the soup had simmered. I'm telling you because you're my son and I love you, Patrick. And because I want both of you to understand something. What? I have always known exactly what I own, I said. I have always known exactly what I'm doing. The only question was whether you were going to treat me like someone side who does. He was quiet for a long time. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. And this time it sounded like he meant the whole thing. The fish-shaped spoon rest is still by the stove. The sage green walls are still in the bedroom. The house on Clover Mill Road is mine, documented and protected and watched over by 3 different legal and financial safeguards that I put in place in a single month when I understood that nobody was going to protect it for me. The Whispering Pines folder is gone. I assume Serena took it home, or threw it away, or it's in a drawer somewhere in her house, becoming the thing she and Conrad don't talk about. I go to book club on Thursdays. I do the crossword in pen. I drove myself to the neuropsychologist's office, parked in the garage, answered every question they asked me, and drove myself home. The results arrived in the mail 12 days later in a plain envelope, and I opened them at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and then I put them in the red accordion folder in the second drawer on the right, because that's where I keep the things that matter. Last Sunday, Patrick came over with the boys, my grandsons, 8 and 12, and loud in the way that only children who feel safe somewhere are loud. The 12-year-old wanted to show me something on his phone. The 8-year-old ate 3 helpings of the lemon chicken rice, Harold's recipe, which is actually my recipe, and always has been. Patrick helped me with the dishes afterward, the way he used to when he was a teenager, and it was just the 2 of us finishing up in the kitchen while Harold fell asleep on the couch watching the news. He didn't bring up Serena. I didn't either. But before he left, he stopped at the door and looked at me in a way he hasn't looked at me in a while. Not like a problem, not like a situation, just like his mother. You okay? He said. I'm fine, I said. I've always been fine. He nodded, he kissed my cheek. He took the boys to the car. I stood in the doorway and watched them drive away, and then I went inside, and I locked the door, and the key was mine.